Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a while since we've had in-person town hall meetings. I have a couple of things on my mind I want to talk with you about. I've invited about a half a dozen people to present some issues, which I think will be of interest, and then we can talk about whatever you all want to talk about. We'll start with me saying what's on my mind. I invited Karen Murray and Ronnie Myers and Michelle Novotny to give us a profile of what we know so far about the incoming classes for the medical school, the dental school, and the physical therapy program. Some of the other programs, it's still too early to say. That speech pathology was still doing interviews as of last week. I asked Jennifer Rickert to show us some data, which I thought was remarkable, the amount of social media traffic about commencement and about the new signage. We're going to talk about the third rail of higher education, parking, and then some updates on accreditation from Jennifer Rickert, Jennifer Salcido, and Pam Ludmer about Middle States GME and LCME. And first thing on my mind is to talk with you about the fire. Now, Michael or Juan, I'm going to need a little technology. I'm going to make the video play. Thank you, Juan. Well, the reason I wanted you to watch the 15-second video is because a lot of you weren't on campus, didn't actually see it. And I've had a couple people comment, well, was it a big deal? I don't think I need to convince you it was a big deal from watching that. This is a second floor unit in Grasslands 1. So the second floor unit where the fire was totaled. The unit immediately underneath it, where the firemen's hoses have the water come down, is totaled. The units to the left, where the firemen cut holes in the ceiling to vent the smoke, were not directly damaged, but obviously they had holes in the ceiling, and they turned the electricity off. So in total, it was 8 apartments that were knocked out, 13 tenants that were displaced from all the schools of the college. So Vilma and Kat in the housing office put the students into hotels at the college's expense. They hired a moving company to move what was salvageable. And one of the students was graduating and had already graduated and had a delayed checkout, but the others needed housing. And so apartments were found in the remainder of Grasslands for everyone. Okay, so the obvious question is, so Edward, what caused the fire? What I've learned from this is I have no opinion until the insurance inspector has an opinion. I have listened to what the fire marshal speculated, but they clearly are all deferring to professionals who show up from the insurance company, who interview people and study things. Anything I would say would be speculation. There are people who do this for a living. I'll wait to see if they have something to say. So we have short-term and long-term issues for the college. Got to be sure that, well, I was years ago taken by a book for the New Yorker named McPhee. And he wrote a book called Looking for a Ship, which is a book about the merchant marine of all things. And if you're thinking, what the hell does that have to do with anything? He talks about how an experienced sea captain deals with crises. And the captain says, first you save the people, then you save the ship, then you worry about the cargo. And I think that's a good lesson. So first we worry about the students, then we worry about preserving the buildings, and then we worry about material possessions. So most importantly, nobody was physically hurt. people obviously have psychological distress from this, but thank God, there was nobody physically injured. So we've got to have them have proper housing. We require renters insurance in the building. Insurance claims will have to be filed for the individual renters. Insurance claims will have to be filed for the college. Then we have to ascertain, can the damaged apartments be restored? What is involved in the restoration? Those are relatively short-term issues. Long-term issues. Those of you who've been around here know that this stock of housing dates from when the college moves here from New York. Grasslands 1, Grasslands 2's later. This is well before building codes required sprinklers. Well before that. So no one requires you to retrospectively install sprinklers, although Grasslands 2 has sprinklers in the egress areas. We're going to have a serious talk about how long is this housing stock going to be used, and are we prepared to pay multiple 7 figures in retrospect to go out and put sprinklers in it? And the impetus to do something different with parcel 5, the demolition of Munger, just went way up for me. Because any of you who've had any family members in the building trades, for stuff like this, it's easier to build fresh than to do renovation work. So how quickly can we get Munger demolished and build a new stock of housing and put this out of commission? Now, these are mostly things that I and the buildings and grounds people and the board of trustees have to worry about. The reason I want everyone to worry about it a little is I just rattled off some things that are really expensive. And it's not like we had a checkbook sitting around with $80 to $120 million to demolish Munger and build a new building. There was going to be bond issues, et cetera. And right now, the borrowing market, interest rates are high. And in order to make housing at a cost price point suitable for students, you need lower borrowing costs, et cetera. So there'll be a lot of moving parts to deal with this in the short term and in the long term. The Finance Committee of the Board of Trustees met on Friday, and the full board meets tonight. And that means it's time to approve the college budget. I promised the board budgets in the black for the last 5 years, and we've given budgets in the black. There'll be another budget in the black this year. And every time I talk about this, most people either overtly say or thinking, well, that's nice. Am I getting a raise? The budget is constructed like last year's. We did a COLA in January of this year. The budget is constructed, if everything holds okay, the COLA will be in January. Now, I've always tried to tell you the truth. All the arithmetic was done before the fire. So all's well, we do okay with the insurance claims in a timely fashion, et cetera. So I don't, I cannot engrave the COLA in granite right now, but if everything goes the way we hope, then you'll get, like we did last year, you'll get an email from me and Adam around December saying we're all's well, we're okay, here's what the COLA is going to be and the day it's going to start. So everybody gives me a list of, I need this, I want this, and we do the best we can to balance everything, but, big but, right? Yeah, inflation went up 7% on an annualized basis last year, and inflation in certain areas was a lot worse. Electrical costs, gas costs. There's some things you buy in higher education you can put off or you delay. I can't tell Con Ed I don't want to pay the bill. I can't tell the gas company we don't want to pay the bill. Got to pay the bill. So, and I don't want to do this by just driving up student indebtedness, with some schools raising tuition 7–10%. So we kept the tuition increases as low as possible in conjunction with keeping the ship going in the right direction financially. Searches. These are a list of searches ongoing or possibly happening. I should be able to announce the new dean of the School of Medicine in the next couple of days. Got some things to be taken care of. And even after all the paperwork is done, I'm of the opinion the decent thing to do is to tell the other finalists they're not getting the job before I make any announcements about who did get the job. Same for an announcement for Dean of Undergraduate Medical Education and Faculty Lead for the LCME. Dr. Chowdhury's announced he's going to retire in December. Search for the chair of urology. Still got an open search for the chair of pediatrics. We've got 2 searches with similar names. Dean Amler's got closure for rehabilitation science and SHSP, which is different than in the medical schools Hinterbuckner chair for the search for the chair of physical medicine and rehab. I started interviewing the finalists for that job today. Dr. Safai will probably think about retiring in about a year and a half or 2. He is our most senior clinical chair. I don't know, Joe, he says the 2 of you are in a race for who's the most senior. He says he thinks he is. Are you the more senior or is he? Yeah. Okay, all right. And periodically people say things like, well, shouldn't we be waiting till there's a new dean? Why? I mean, there's an interim dean, Ahmet, and we'll keep on moving. There's nothing to be gained by waiting. There's 2 things I wanted to, one thing I wanted to talk to you about that's not on the slides. Every morning, the last 3 or 4 weeks, I get up and see if the Supreme Court issued a decision on students for fair admission versus University of North Carolina, and the other case, student for fair admissions versus Harvard. If you haven't been following this, let me give you the summary. Students for Fair Admission is a made-up organization of a professional group of litigators who spent 20 years attacking affirmative action. Their funding is obscure. The New York Times has tried to figure out who's paying for all these lawyers, but they won't disclose it, and they've got some kind of legal construct they don't have to. Most of the plaintiffs' attorneys are former law clerks of Clarence Thomas, and their mission is to overturn the Supreme Court case of Grutter versus Michigan. This was a case which the majority decision was written by Sandra Day O'Connor, in which the court said it was reasonable to do holistic admissions, including considerations of family income and race to achieve diversity and selective admissions in higher education. When the case was litigated in the Massachusetts state courts, the Massachusetts courts held for Harvard, saying that Harvard was entitled to do holistic admissions. They have appealed to the Supreme Court. Now, I'm betting that, unlike you, I have actually read the 350 pages of oral arguments in these 2 cases. The oral arguments were done on October 31st. The plaintiff's attorneys are not subtle. The aim of our litigation is to end affirmative action in the United States. There is to be no consideration of race in selective admissions. Another quote, Asian Americans in higher education are the new Jews, close quote. The assertion that somehow affirmative action has created a quota system to prevent Asian Americans from being elected, admitted to highly selective programs. Justice Gorish, 3 times in the oral arguments, you can read him saying, oh, I get it. So this case is about discriminating against Asian Americans like they discriminated against Jews in the 1930s, right? 3 times Justice Thomas says, quote, I don't know what the word diversity means. So the defense attorney explains it. 10 pages later, Justice Thomas, I don't know what the word diversity means. 2.5 pages of the defense lawyer saying, well, you know, Mr. Justice, Brown versus Board of Education, achieve a difference in educational outcomes based on diversity in the classroom, sociological data on this. 20 pages later, Justice Thomas, I don't know what the word diversity means. They may have the votes to fine for the plaintiffs. They certainly, we all know, they certainly didn't hesitate about overturning precedent in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health and Roe v. Wade. So friends, I wish I could, now say, so here's how we're going to deal with it. But the answer is nobody knows, because they haven't issued a decision yet. If they completely gut affirmative action, well, like everybody else, there's going to be a lot of meetings to try to figure out what in the world we're going to do. Now, we're kind of done for this year. So it'll be an issue for admissions for next year, but it'll be an acute issue in the medical school and the dental school. 10 to 14,000 applications for 219 seats in the medical school, 3 to 4,000 in the dental school. How are you going to have a diverse class? No, I bring it up not because I have some erudite solution to now recite to you, because, like in the case today about this, alleged states' rights and elections, well, they surprised everyone by a vote to 6-3. They rejected that, theory, which is refighting the Civil War. But that's what I can tell you. And I think all of us in the business of higher education need to worry about it. So next up is Karen Murray to tell us about the profile of the incoming class, followed by Ronnie Myers for the dental school and Michelle for physical therapy. So I'm going to do some magic wand and we'll watch the show.
Hello, I'm Karen Murray, Dean of Admissions for the School of Medicine, here to give a quick update on our 2022-2023 cycle. This was a virtual cycle. Pretty much most medical schools are still using a virtual platform. This started with the pandemic and has continued. Today, I wanted to just give you some numbers as to where we are. For this cycle, we had over 10,000 applications, which is a 13% decrease from our previous cycle. And this we've noticed is a national trend. There's about a 10 to 15% decrease in applications throughout the United States. Some of the important dates for admissions, the dates on the right are the important dates for the applicants, and the dates on the left are important for the admissions office. In February is when the plan to enroll opens up, and we ask the applicants to go in and select the schools they plan to enroll to. For those applicants who are fortunate enough to have multiple acceptances, they're asked to decrease that to 3 acceptances in April. And in May, the commit to enroll opens up. So the first 3, February, April, and May, are all applicant driven. On July 3rd, which is 3 weeks from the start of our first day of the M1 class, the applicants have until that day to commit to the medical school. If they have not committed to the medical school by July 3rd, we then in the office have the option to withdraw their application and offer that acceptance to someone on the wait list. We invited approximately 1,200 applicants for interview. The interview cycle usually goes from September through March and usually ends with the start of the first year class. Our interview day starts with orientation. Orientation is about a 1-hour Zoom meeting where they get to hear from the dean, the chancellor, and the vice chancellor for diversity. They also have a student panel where they meet with students and get to ask the students and discuss anything they want to know about the school in general. The interview sessions start in the afternoon at about 1 p.m. Again, it's a virtual platform. We have 8 stations, so each cycle has 9 applicants. Today, we are using, again, the Profit HR. It's a virtual platform that allows us to still continue our MMI format. The MMI interviewers go through annual orientation and training every year. They also have mock MMIs to help them familiarize themselves with the portal as well as to be comfortable during the MMI interviews. Every day that we interview, we have a daily briefing session where we can find out any questions they have and give them any updates that need to be passed on, both for the portal as well as for the applicants. The admissions committee meets over Zoom. They have an orientation in September, and their meetings are usually from September to April. They meet the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. Students are coming on campus. The accepted students are brought on campus for a tour, as well as a meet and greet with the dean and or vice chancellor of diversity. So in summary, we had about 10,000 applications. We invited about 1,200 students for interviews. We interviewed about 964 for a class of 219. Unfortunately, the class is still changing. It's the numbers change even today, they're still changing. So we're not able to give you a yield, but we'll try to give you a general consensus of what the class looks like. Currently, we have about 50% women and about 59% New Yorkers, which is about the same as it was last year. And the overall GPA is 3.67, and the average MCAT is 515. Again, very similar to the class of the year before. For the upcoming cycle, we plan on updating our MMI questions, and we're always looking to recruit new MMI interviewers. Thank you for your time.
This is the largest number of people I've seen in a lecture hall in a while. Anyway, just to give you a little bit of an update of where we are in our admissions process. As you may know, our new students will arrive on campus in about a week and a half on July 5th. Right now, this is our 8th entering class. This was in 2016. At that point in time, we were the 6th school to open in the US. And now there are 68, and there are actually 8 new schools in the pipeline. I'm sorry, 10 in the pipeline, and new schools since 2011 were 8. So over the next probably 4 or 5 years, there'll be 10 additional schools. This is the national trend comparing 2022 to 2013. You can see that the applicant pool is essentially pretty flat from 22 to 23. And the number of schools that students apply to, each applicant applies to approximately 10 schools. And the diversity applicant pool over the course of time from last year to this year has really not changed a whole lot. Obviously, you might say the Native American or other Pacific Islanders changed significantly, but they're just such small numbers. But in generally, only the small numbers change a lot. Unfortunately, certainly looking at the Hispanic and the Black African American, not really much change from a standpoint of the numbers of individuals. Certainly, if you look over 10 years of data or 20 years of data, it's sorely depressing to see the amount of change in the Black and Hispanic community. Looking at this information, the trend in the dental application pool is really, if you look at the graph here, it is decreasing. And if you look at this, this is the number of admits to school. So you have a relatively flat applicant pool, maybe slightly decreasing, but you have 8 new dental schools in the pipeline, and you have increased numbers of first-year matriculants. So these are converging lines. I don't know when the tipping point might be, but with new schools, one doesn't know. And if one looks at the first-year enrollment, back in 2018, we had about 6,200, and now we're at 6,500. It's a 4.2% increase over time. And as I said, it just continues to rise. This is our applicant pool over the course of the 7 years that we've admitted people. And we now had this year 22678. We've continually gone up each year. Last 3 years, obviously, a little bit flat. As I said, 9.72 is the average number of schools that people apply to. And what that tells us, if we look at the overall application, we can see that the number of people who apply to TCDM is about 1 in 4 applicants. See that in a minute. The national complete, again, it's much different than medicine. Ours increased slightly this year. I mean, half a percentage point. And as I said, it's really pretty flat at this particular point in time. And we were pretty flat as well. This is wanted to give you a comparison of 1975 to 2023. This is always pretty amazing me. Since 1975, not to give any full disclosure, was the year I applied to dental school. But in 1975, there were 15,607 applicants. There were only 60 dental schools, and there were 5,900 first-year slots. Women only comprised 10% of the applicant pool. But in 2023, we have this reduction of applicants. We have an increase of 8 dental schools. 55% of the people applying were women. And the first-year enrollment only went up essentially 600, about 9%. If you look at the population of the US, went up almost 60%. So one would say, we don't have enough dentists. But we actually have enough dentists, we just don't have them in the right places. That's the biggest problem. So our class of 2027, everybody in the room, I'm sure, knows about our increased enrollment. And just to give you a history of how we planned that or worked around that, was that we didn't get approval from the Commission on Dental Accreditation to increase our enrollment until March, but we knew it was a year process and we were in the pipeline, and we might have gotten approval in time to be able to admit people for this year. Getting approval in March gives you a very short window, but the admissions process was based on an increased number of interviewed applicants, right? So instead of interviewing, let's say 400 people, we interviewed 600 people, so that we would have a large waiting list of viable applicants. We could increase the enrollment. And now, coming on July 5th, we have 194 individuals who will be here. The DAT average has not changed, even with the increased number of people admitted. Our DAT average is 6 for all private schools in the US, and our GPA right now is 3.56 for those admitted, and our percent yield is 35%. It is higher this year, obviously, because of the increased enrollment. That's why and it was late in the game as far as the yield is concerned. A lot of graphs, you don't have to, but our students for the 2027 year come from 19 different states, which is up from 12. We have 9 international students, come from 99 undergraduate colleges, 44% from the state of New York, 55 in the tri-state area, and 69% non-traditional. Everybody says, what's that? Those are individuals who are not coming right out of dental school, but might have a secondary degree or were in the workforce, and 59% are female. And that's it. Yeah.
Go back to the right there. Some of you will look at this and say, 1975, 90% of the applicants were male, and there was a third more applicants than there were 50 years later, and say, that's remarkable. But if you're of a certain age, it's not remarkable at all. If you wanted to have that many applicants again to dental school, have a shooting war in Vietnam without a volunteer army, and have a draft where there were student deferments if you're in the health professions. Some of you are shaking your heads, you're right. The number of people who suddenly were interested in going to medical school, dental school, or divinity school in the late 60s and 70s among males, and higher went up, because when you were seriously getting a notice greetings from your draft board, then I'm sure that was a big driver. And for you youngins, doesn't ring, but that's what everyone was thinking about. Thank you, Ronnie. Michelle?
Hi, everybody. So I am going to start out by explaining that we have, oh, not on that slide. We have created in the School of Health Sciences and Practice a Department of Rehabilitation Sciences. So under that department, we will now have the Division of Physical Therapy and the Division of Speech Language Pathology. Dr. Sambit Mohapatra will be starting on July 1st, and he is going to be the new chair of that department. So I'm going to be talking today about physical therapy, which just started on campus right after Memorial Day. So our new first year students are in. This is DPT total enrollment over the last 6 years. So we have seen with all 3 classes, an increase of about, we said 15% from 131 to 155, which is impressive for us because the number of applications keeps going down across the board. The PTCAS system admitted 23 new colleges just in the last cycle alone. So we've got increased competition for DPT students. Our first year class has 62 students, which is the largest class in New York Medical College history for DPT. And it's a 15% increase over last year's class size. So we've made all the necessary adjustments to fit these students to be sure that they're having a good experience. That's a class picture of the first year students that just arrived on campus. There you can see the average age is about 24. Most students come right out of college. A pretty even split between male and female students. We have 10 states represented, and then in addition to the United States, we have a student that came to us from Nepal. So interestingly, 15 of our students speak a language other than English, and I think there was at least 5 or 6 of them that speak 3 languages. We have a nice representation of minority students, and over 88,000 volunteer hours were logged collectively by the class. And then I just put some stats there on our dean's list. So thankfully, although we saw this 10% decrease in the number of applicants from last year to this year, we had a 50% yield rate. So the DPT department did a great job during our interview days in really wowing the students to come and join us.
Hello, everyone. One of our strategic goals in the last strategic planning process was to find new ways to enhance our relationships with our affiliates and to show branding opportunities between the organizations. And one of our largest affiliates is Metropolitan Hospital. So we were working with Metropolitan, and we decided to put up banners on the outside of their building that shows the partnership. And you can see at the bottom of the slide what is actually on those banners and where it will be right on the front of the building. So anyone going into the building, walking by the building, or more importantly, driving by the building will be able to see the relationship between the 2 organizations.
That's 2nd Avenue coming out of the Q subway station of Waltham North.
Right. So a lot of eyeballs are going to now be seeing these banners, and you can see they're going to be very prominently displayed on the building. Metropolitan is actually undergoing some construction right now. So these banners are going to go up in the next couple of weeks. So we look forward to seeing them when they're on the buildings and taking actual photos when they go up. But we're really looking forward to this new branding opportunity. And we're very happy that we were able to work with the hospital in this way. Now switching gears a little bit, we just had commencement, a wonderful event, many students and family members on campus for all 3 of our schools. And if you were at the event, you couldn't help but notice there was a lot of photographers and a lot of videographers. And by the end of all of the activities, we had thousands of photos to go through and hours and hours and hours of video. And what we did with those things is, I'm sure you got our emails, you saw emails go out with links to all of these different things. They were also on the website and they were on social media. And so I wanted to just take a moment to let you know how we performed and how many people were actually able to participate with us through commencement, not just on campus, but through social media. So we ended up having about probably about 6,000 photos that were taken over the course of those days with professional photographers, as well as a PR team. And we picked the 2,000 best photos and put them on our Flickr site. And on Flickr, we had almost 8,000 people view the photos. And on the videos that we took, we put them on our YouTube channels. And we also live streamed all 3 of the ceremonies. Those live streams had almost 3,000 people watching them. And the videos we created, the videos were, I'm sure you saw highlight videos for each of the schools, as well as overall NYMC. We also did segments for all of the commencement speakers as well as the student speakers, and those all went on social media. And those just on YouTube alone got over 1,000 views. But then also our social media channels, this is our reach. So this is our different social media sites. And you can see on Facebook, we had over 10,000 people that viewed all of our different posts and engaged with us. And then Twitter, just about 7,000. Instagram was almost 20,000. And surprisingly, I actually thought Instagram would be our most viewed site. It was LinkedIn with almost 22,000 people viewing our unique content. So even though we had all these people on campus, we also had many, many more that were able to participate with us and have the joy of commencement through social media, the website, and all of our other channels. So I'm just going to switch gears for a second. Dr. Mordew cannot join the town hall. So as my role in strategic planning, I also helped co-chair our Middle States accreditation, and Dr. Mordew was the chair. So in her absence, I'm just going to give you an update on Middle States. I'm sure all of you remember we went through our Middle States accreditation process in 2021. At that time, we had no citations, no recommendations. We got a full 8-year accreditation. We are up for our next accreditation in 2028. But during that time, it was the pandemic. So we had a virtual accreditation, and any organization that got accredited virtually has to have an on-site visit. So ours will take place next month. And this does not have any bearing on our overall accreditation. It is just merely, we are going to have the site visitors come on campus. They're going to do a 2-hour tour with Dr. Mordew and myself to make sure that the campus is as we said it was. And that will take place. Like I said, we're still picking the date, but it'll definitely happen next month. And all organizations are also required to provide an annual update. This includes budget information, financial aid information. You can see the list. And we submitted that report last month. So that is the status of the accreditation, but we are in very good standing. And Rob, I think you are next.
Good afternoon. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Rob Lancia, Director of Public Safety on campus, and Dr. Halpern has asked me to talk about parking today. You heard him refer to it as the third rail of higher education. Not the most riveting topic to talk about, but something that's going to affect every single one of you every day as you come back and forth on campus. So he asked me to address two things. Why do we need a new parking plan? It's a simple math equation. We have about 3,600 people on campus that are eligible to park on campus, 3,600 people in our system. We have 2,100 parking spaces on campus. That's a deficit of about 1,500 parking spaces. We have always managed on this campus with this deficit. Toro Dental does a great job of scheduling their students on different days. By the nature of med school, all of our students aren't always here, and you folks aren't here every single day at the same time. So we've always been able to manage. Westchester Medical Center has helped us out. We lease 250 parking spaces at their parking garage. And I think we've done that for the last 10 years or so. Kim, I'm looking at you. Yeah. Last decade. We are losing those parking spaces. So that 1,500 deficit, add 250 parking spaces to that. They can no longer fit our students' vehicles in their facility. Toro Dental. We have one of the best dental colleges in the country. And as Dean Myers just mentioned, we're going to be adding about 100 students next week, and they're going to be adding an additional 100 students next year. That's 200 more parking spaces I need to come up with. So that's a 450 parking space deficit on top of the 1,500. And then when you throw in COVID, sometimes you show up on campus and it looks like we have plenty of parking on this campus. That's because our schedules have changed. It's difficult to judge how much parking we're going to need in the future, but we do know that we have a deficit. Dr. Halpern's second question for me to address is, what is the college going to be doing about this? I can tell you what we've already done. We've gotten together, we've created plans, and we started expanding our existing parking lots. For those of you that are familiar with the steam plant, there's a parking lot in there that we've never used. We're now have about 60 students' vehicles on there. If you've noticed, we've expanded the gravel lot that's behind Sunshine Cottage. We're getting an additional 25 or so vehicles there. We've created spaces in our existing lots. We've removed some of our grass islands. We've paved over them, striped them, and we are applying for permits to expand the NYMC driveway, the NYMC roadway, We're going to try and create an entirely new parking lot on Vosburgh. And that's so we can plan for the future, plan for our dental students that are coming, for everybody else that's going to be coming back to work. We didn't stop here, though. So these yellow lines, yellow boxes indicate about over 200 parking spaces we've added to campus in the last 2 months. The red signify the expansion of the MEC and the creation of a new parking lot over at Vosburgh. So that's well over 200 parking spaces we've recouped. As we've discussed this, we've done some studies, we've realized that there are people that park on our campus that don't even work on this campus. And we need to control access to campus. So if you see these tan-shaped T's that I've inserted in here, we're going to start installing parking gates. We've already done that over here and at 7 Dana. This whole lower lot will be closed in. We'll be adding 100 students' vehicles over there. We're going to control access to our campus, something that we definitely need to get a grasp on. So like I said, we're going to install gates. 7 Dana is going to get a gate. Skyline's going to get 2 gates. I have to work with the dental school and figure out exactly how we want to configure those with their patients. And up at SHSP, it's wide open over there. So we're going to try and install gates and control who actually parks along that roadway in our gravel lot and the new lot that we're going to create. Kim Bologna is doing a great job. She manages our Secure, which is our access control to campus. We are going to better manage that database. We're going to know who belongs on campus and who does not belong on campus. And we're going to improve some of our signage on campus. So if you've been up by Munger, this sign has already been installed. It is a large sign. It is very clear that this is reserved parking. If you have not been granted the reserved parking on campus, you shouldn't park there. I think it's pretty clear. It tells you need a permit, and it tells you that you will be towed if you park there and you don't belong there. So we will start towing vehicles from our campus. We really don't have much of a choice. These aren't the only signs that are going in. You're going to notice all the reserve signs are going to get replaced. Our visitor parking, which is the MEC roadway, there are no signs there any longer. Over the years, they've just disappeared and people park there when they feel like it. Visitor parking signs will be going up. If there are students here who I know use that, please stop parking in the visitor parking. If you're running late for class, that's not the place for you to park. We've continued to try and improve the way we're managing parking on campus. We've created new parking permits for everyone. Very specific, people are going to be assigned very specific parking, the steam plant, the gravel lot. This will be the new employee parking sticker. And then anyone that is the honor of getting a reserved spot, these are our reserved stickers that we'll be issuing. Come the fall, after our students are all loaded into our system, we're going to do a campus-wide audit. So I asked for some patience. Jim Curran, God bless you for putting the DocuSign together. Thank you, I appreciate it. Jim and I have been working very closely. Most of you are familiar with the DocuSign system. You have to go into DocuSign and pretty much raise your right hand and tell us that you belong on campus. We've enhanced it. We're going to make it a little bit better. And now we're going to go and we're going to do an audit of everybody that's on campus. We're probably going to go department by department, school by school. We ask for some cooperation in getting that information back to us. We will issue you a new parking permit. And then we can truly have control of our parking lot. Everyone will have parking, and it'll be a much better managed system. And lastly, if you go on the NYMC website, Nick Janiga and I worked for the last several months creating a permit, parking policy, parking eligibility policy. And I will sum it up using Dr. Halperin's words. If you do not work on campus, you do not park on campus. If you work here on Monday, but you happen to work someplace else the rest of the week, go park someplace else the rest of the week. When you work here on campus, that's when you park here. We don't want to deprive our students of a parking space because you don't want to pay. Does anyone know how much it costs to park at Westchester Medical Center a month? $20. So for one of our students to not get a parking space because you don't want to come up with $20 to park where you work, I don't want to be the person to make that happen, and we won't. So we're going to better manage our system. We're going to go back and we're going to audit as people come onto campus through our computerized electronic system. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
just to give you an update about GME accreditation, our update for the 2023-2024 academic year is that we currently have 25 ACGME approved residency and fellowship programs in total. That includes 18 with continued accreditation, 6 with initial accreditation, and 1 with continued accreditation with warning. We also help to oversee the 2 CODA-sponsored programs in general practice dentistry and oral and maxillofacial surgery, and both of those programs have approval without reporting requirements. We do have some exciting updates for the 2023-2024 academic year. This will be the first full academic year in which the programs at St. Mary's and St. Clair's, for which we assumed sponsorship near the end of the previous academic year in psychiatry and internal medicine, will be under the college. We are also very excited to have 3 new programs that will have their first residents or fellows during the current academic year. That is in psychiatry at St. Joseph's Medical Center, endocrinology fellowship at Metropolitan, and a new interventional cardiology fellowship program at St. Michael's. So we're very excited to have those new residents and fellows and to be working with them. We have also seen expansion of our residency and fellowship programs. The permanent complement increases obtained by our programs for this 2023-2024 academic year are as listed. So we have increases for anesthesiology program at Metropolitan, the cardiology fellowship at St. Michael's, the gastroenterology fellowship at Metropolitan, and a significant increase for the surgery residency program also at Metropolitan. We also have another application pending for a complement increase for our other internal medicine program at St. Mary's and St. Clair's. So we're having further increases in our current programs. So we're excited to be expanding and to continue to work with our current programs. We will have approximately 490 total residents and fellows in our accredited programs for this academic year, including both ACGME and CODA programs. And we additionally have new institutionally approved from ACGME NST or non-standard training programs, which are programs for graduated residents receiving specialized training. So for instance, we will have a non-standard training program for the academic chief resident in the internal medicine program, which is an additional professional development year for graduated residents who are on J1 visas. We will also be having an HIV-oriented non-standard training program at St. Michael's Medical Center affiliated with our infectious disease fellowship there. So we're also excited to be in support of those programs and the additional opportunities it provides our new and current trainees. That is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody, welcome, good afternoon. So I'm going to give you a couple of LCME updates. So first, Dr. Kessler and Celia Freeman really got the whole community started in this process really at the beginning of this academic year. And since January, different people have been identified to write different parts of the responses for LCME. There are 12 high-level standards, and under there are 93 different elements for which we have to provide data and narrative around what we as a school have been doing since the last visit. So groups were then divided into these 5 working groups that you see here, where things were put into buckets in different categories. You can see here educational resources, institutional setting, medical students, faculty affairs, and the educational program. And these were some of the people who were chairing those different working groups. And what they did is they started looking at the narratives, started looking at the data, seeing what's there, what's missing, and thinking about what are we already doing well, what are some weaknesses and areas of improvement. In addition to those 5 working groups, we also have an independent student analysis. We had 3 students, so one of them has already graduated, who created a survey for the students to see what did they think about some of these things. They collected that data. We had a great, more than 80% response rate, so students were really involved and engaged in this process. And with all of that information, there was then a self-study task force chaired by 2 of our our clinical chairs, Tracy Milligan and Lori Solomon, and they had a number of other members of the community, including some of the working group chairs, other faculty, staff, students, to look at this information again and start to bring it all together, see what are we doing well, what are weaknesses, what are things for us to work on. And what they will be doing is creating an executive summary that will be presented to the interim dean of the School of Medicine, so we can really start moving and saying, what do we need to continue to do for the accreditation process. All told, there have been about 133 faculty, administrators, staff, and students. So a really great representation in terms of people being involved in this process already. Wanted to highlight for the group some important dates for everybody to keep in mind to set the time frame. So on October 16th through the 18th, we're going to have some mock visits. So this is where some peers and some volunteers are going to come and give us a trial run as if it was a real LCME visit. And they're going to come. Some people have already been identified to participate in this process and answer the questions as if the LCME were actually here. So that's going to be a practice run for us, and we can see how we're doing. December 11th is our target date for completion of the narrative, this big document, which is about 400 pages long. So we hope to have that done by December. And I want to highlight this because there may be that it might be me, maybe other members who ask some of you for some information to help us with this. So I want to just keep this deadline in mind, that if we ask you to do something, there's going to be a little bit of urgency for us to do it, since we want everything to be done by December. And then April 8th through 10th is when the real LCM visit is going to be. And again, people will be identified to participate in that process. So that's where we are right now. We'll certainly continue to give more updates moving forward as to how we're doing with that process. So thank you for your time. Oh, one last thing. Forgot I had this slide for people to see. The curriculum redesign. This is our graphic for the class of 2027. This is the curriculum that they are going to be experiencing year 1 through year 4. So you can see again the shortened pre-clerkship phase of the curriculum, where students will be taking the STEP exam in March. And in April, they will be getting into their clinical rotations for their clinical core. And then they have an advanced 4th year curriculum, as you see here, which gives them even more opportunities for electives, for research, for advanced experiences in their field of choice.
The people who typed in questions were asking about the searches. I told you the news on the searches. As far as Rob Lansky's presentation on the parking, everyone, now remember the cards just got reshuffled because of the fire. So if the fire marshal comes and says, I demand you build a new road to change the way fire engines get on campus, we don't get to discuss that. We just have to do what we're told. That could affect parking flow. If we go ahead and start putting in sprinklers, big construction requires staging areas where they bring their material and stack it. So the point of that is I need everybody to take a big breath, and if whatever happens with the parking, there's some twists and turns, we're all going to have to work together on this. As Rob said, we're losing 250 parking spaces that we had been leasing from WMC. Anything you'd like to hear more about or questions, please? There's microphones there, which I ask people to use so the people who are tuned in online can hear. You all know the standard joke, like I'm from North Carolina, you all just going to stare at me. This is going to be. Rob, it looks like you want to take a shot at those. You better use the microphone so people can hear you.
Is this up for dental? So guests and speakers are always going to be provided parking on campus. We will be installing gates. It's not going to happen for a while, or may not happen at all based on the fire, but I think we have gates going into Skyline. And they'll just check in with public safety. We'll have visitor tags for them, for our speakers. What is the second question? Alumni are always welcome back to our campus. They can stop in at public safety and we'll get them a day pass or some sort of a parking permit for them.
Other questions or comments? Maybe Rob, you should tell everyone about the new man comes from University of Vermont for a minute. There's a microphone there.
As Dr. Halpern said, we reconfigured, realigned the teaching program and the academic structure in rehabilitation science, where now we have two divisions, one for speech language pathology, one for physical therapy. Dr. Janet Delat is right here, chief of the Division of Physical Therapy. A new chair is coming from University of Vermont, has both clinical background and research background, starting next Monday. So come on back next Monday. We'll be glad to introduce you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I've had some hallway questions about post-pandemic and the food service. Let me mention that. Obviously, we've got the high-tech automat that here, and we've got one in Skyline. We're going to look in to see whether it's practical to put a third one in SHSP. Then we're going to look into whether we can create a soup and sandwich shop or some kind of hot food service here. There's a but. I've had a couple of queries. Well, I want non-kosher food. There's a hospital across the street with a cafeteria. You can eat whatever you want. It's a university under Jewish auspices. It's a kosher dining service. And no matter what people send me emails about it, that's what it is. There's really nothing else I can, it's not nothing I can, not anything to negotiate about. There's some universities that are under Roman Catholic auspices and some are Presbyterian, and I worked at a Methodist university for 25 years, and that's who we are. So, the hour's gone by, so thanks everyone for coming. Have a good afternoon. Thanks.